Okay, hello. Yesterday, your assignment was to take a look at the session one Keystone review. That's what we're looking at right here. Your job was to make a copy of the slideshow, and then using the review sheets on the website, you were supposed to take a look at the session one review sheets and fill in the information on the summary slides. So session one is about basic biological principles. You are to go to the review sheet, watch the videos here, and then answer these questions. Explain the characteristics of life, differences between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells, and differences between plant and animal cells. If you didn't do that, go back and do that. If you did finish that, today we are working on our sample questions, and you're going to be working in the Ed puzzle to complete the sample questions, and I'm going to be going through everything with you. So starting with sample question number one, we're going to bounce back and forth a little bit, but here we have, I might have to, can I hide this? Can I just move that? It looks like it can move. Okay. That's not where I want you. Move over here. There we go. No. There. Okay. Which characteristic of life is best shown in this diagram? So in this specific diagram, which characteristic of life is shown? I'm going to give you a minute to read the question and then answer it on the Ed puzzle. You can pause this if you need to. All right, let's look at the answer. If you chose D, you would be correct. The first one, DNA is the genetic code in an organism. Yes, that is one of the characteristics of life. B, an organism is made of one or more cells. Yes, that is a characteristic of life. An organism responds to change in its environment. Yes, that is a characteristic of life. Changes occur in organisms as they grow and develop. That is the correct answer because that is being shown in the diagram. This was a good question. 86% of students who took this question got it correct. Let's look at the next one. This is in a bad spot again. Hate this thing. Okay. Which of the following is essential to proper functioning of all prokaryotic and eukaryotic organisms? You need to know the differences between prokaryotes and eukaryotes. So, they all need oxygen, they all need carbon dioxide, they all need ATP, or they all need sodium chloride. Let's take a second, answer this in the Ed puzzle. Pause if you have to. Our answer here is ATP. We need oxygen. We breathe out carbon dioxide. We need sodium chloride. Other organisms do. But what does everybody need? Everybody needs that cellular currency, the gas for the gas tank for cells, which is ATP. It's the essential molecule for transferring chemical energy within all cells. This one was a little tougher, and only 60% of students in Pennsylvania got this question correct, but you will. Okay, number 3. Which statement best compares eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells? Eukaryotic cells are smaller than prokaryotic cells. Prokaryotic cells are more complex than eukaryotic cells. prokaryotic cells contain distinct central organelles and eukaryotic cells do not, or eukaryotic cells contain membrane-bound organelles and prokaryotic cells do not. Answer this on the Ed puzzle. If we take a look at the answer, you'll see that the most correct answer is that eukaryotic cells contain membrane-bound organelles. All right, so looking at why the other choices were wrong, one, we know eukaryotic cells are bigger than prokaryotes. We know prokaryotic cells are less complicated than eukaryotic cells. We know that prokaryotic cells do not contain distinct central organelles. So these were all backwards, and then D was the only correct answer. Number 4, lungs and capillaries both have porous linings that allow certain substances to move into or out of the structure. Which function do these porous linings most likely serve in living organisms? So this is a structure function question. Your choices are heat release, gas exchange, carbohydrate absorption, or osmotic pressure regulation. Give you a second to think about it. Pause if you have to. Looking at the correct answer. So using our context clues, think about your lungs. Okay, you don't need to know much about anatomy to know that your lungs help, that's how we breathe. That's our respiration. We're breathing in air, we're breathing out, breathing out air, but we're taking in that oxygen in the air and we're getting rid of the carbon dioxide after our cells have been oxygenated. So those are gases. Those are gases, right? All right, so heat release. Not really what our lungs do. Gas exchange feels right. Carbohydrate absorption, not really what our lungs do. And osmotic pressure regulation. Remember osmosis. Whenever you see osmosis, think about water. Our lungs don't do much for water pressure. That would be bad, right? Water in your lungs is not a good thing. So without knowing much, you can use your context clues and come to the conclusion that B was the most correct answer. Sadly, only 53% of other students got that correct. But you're going to take your time. You're going to read through all of your choices. You're going to calm yourself down. Don't freak out when you're like, I don't know anything about lungs and what's a capillary. That doesn't matter. Calm down and look at what you do know, and you'll be able to use your context clues to eliminate choices and come up with the best answer. Number 5. Using the diagram below, answer the question. What do we have here? A scientist observes a single-celled organism with several long whip-like tails. Which function do the whip-like tails most likely perform for the organism? Same thing, guys. Don't freak out if you don't know what this is. Think about context clues. Think about what makes sense. Defense against predators, maybe. Maybe it whips the predator with its tail. Movement through the environment. Detection of the location of a light source. That doesn't feel right. Measurement of atmospheric temperature changes. Okay, so think about this question. Answer it on the Ed puzzle. Give you a second here. Pause if you have to. Okay, happily, most students did get this correct. It'd be cool. It'd be much cooler if this was used for defense. I'd watch that. But the most likely choice here was movement through the environment. So good job. Hopefully you got that one right. All right, number 6. What am I doing? That's not what I wanted. There we go. Number 6. Which characteristic is shared by both prokaryotes and eukaryotes? Okay, again, knowing the differences between prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells. They have organ systems, they make their own food, they contain genetic material, or they need oxygen to breathe. Think about that for a second. Pause if you have to. All right, so for this one, understanding the differences between prokaryotes and eukaryotes is important, and understanding the characteristics of life that all living things share is important. So remember back to your summary questions for this unit. You needed to paraphrase in your own words characteristics of life and then differences between prokaryotes and eukaryotes. So let's go back to the question. If you selected C, they contain genetic material, you are correct. That was this one. Let's see. Yes, 66% of students got that correct. Organ systems, you don't see organs in all living things, especially not prokaryotic living things. They're bacteria. Make their own food. We don't make our own food. We're heterotrophic, so anything that would be a heterotroph would not apply. Contain genetic material? Yes, all living things contain genetic material and need oxygen to breathe. That's true for many of us, but some organisms live off of sulfur, methane gas, not oxygen. So they're anaerobic, so they hate oxygen. Next question. Most prokaryote there we go. Most prokaryotes and eukaryotes maintain a reserve of ATP. Which feature of prokaryotes and eukaryotes makes the ATP reserve necessary? So they have cell membranes, they can change over time, they use energy to function, or they have the ability to reproduce. Take a second, answer this on the Ed puzzle. Pause if you have to. Looking at the answer key. What we have here, if you selected they use energy to function, you are correct. You are correct. Most prokaryotes and eukaryotes maintain a reserve of ATP. Okay, so that's what this question is about. Do they all have cell membranes? Yeah, but that's not what it's asking. Can they change over time? Yes, that is a characteristic of life. The prokaryotes and eukaryotes share, but that is not what this question is asking. They use energy to function. When you see ATP, you think energy, and then they have the ability to reproduce. Yes, that is a characteristic of life, but not what the question is asking. So the Keystone exam tries to get tricky by giving you all these choices and like confusing you about what they're asking. But just take your time, take a breath, read the question. As a reminder, the Keystone exam is not timed. You are able to take as much time as you need to complete the assessment, and you are given scrap paper. I love to make little notes to myself to help me trigger memories and recall information. All right, which structure and function are common to all plants and some protists and distinguishes them from all animals? I hate this question because I feel like it's confusing, but what it's really asking is which structure and function will you find in plants and some protists that makes it different from animals? And if we're using our context clues here, we're really like, all right, what's the difference between plants and animals? And it's the way they obtain energy. Plants are photosynthetic autotrophs. Animals are heterotrophic. So we're thinking about how they obtain energy. So here we go. Chloroplasts that conduct photosynthesis, mitochondria that conduct photosynthesis, chloroplasts that conduct cellular respiration, or mitochondria that conduct cellular respiration. So take a second, answer this in the ed puzzle. Pause if you have to. Let's take a closer look at this bad question. It's just poorly worded, and that's one of the things I hate the most about the Keystone exam. If you selected A, that is the most correct answer. Chloroplasts are not found in animal cells, and they conduct photosynthesis to make energy for plants and some photosynthetic protists. Mitochondria do not conduct photosynthesis. Chloroplast does not conduct cellular respiration, and mitochondria conduct cellular respiration. They are shared characteristic among plants, animals, and protists, so you will find them in both prokaryotic and, you will find these mitochondria, not in prokaryotic, I don't know why I said that, in plants and animals, but they perform cellular respiration. So that's not what makes them different. And that's what that word distinguish means. What distinguishes them from animals. It's another way of saying what makes them different. So, all right, number 9. Life functions are performed at many levels of biological organization. Which level of biological organization is the simplest level at which a structure can support life functions? All right, again, characteristic of life questions. Is it a cell, tissue, organelle, or organ system? Take a minute, pause if you have to, answer this on the ed puzzle. Okay, looking at the answer, many students got this correct, and hopefully you came to this conclusion right away. The best answer here is cell. Cells are the smallest unit of structure and function in living things, and that's what this is asking, which is the simplest level at which a structure can support life functions. All right, next question. We have a short answer or open-ended question here. Students were asked to select a location at a local park and make observations of organisms. The observations from one student are shown on the list. A rabbit is eating grass. A robin is resting on a nest of blue eggs. A turtle is resting on a rock that moves into a turtle resting on a rock moves into the pond water, or a bee transfers pollen between flowers as it collects nectar. These are all observations that someone made while they were in the park. Great for them. Some characteristics of life are shared by all organisms on Earth. Select 2 observations from the list and explain how each observation provides evidence to support a specific characteristic of life. So let's think about what that's asking us. Which of these observations on this list can you say, like, yes, that's an example of one of the characteristics of life? So a robin resting on a nest of blue eggs seems like the easiest to me, because all living organisms reproduce. So I would put, for my observation number, I would say observation number 2. And I would say, the robin's resting on the blue eggs. This is an example of all living things reproducing, which is a specific characteristic of life. And then you would pick something else from the list and talk about how that is a characteristic of life that's supported by the observation. Let's go back and review the characteristics of life real quick. That's not in the answer key. Okay. In the characteristics of life, we have all living things obtain and use energy, maintain homeostasis or an internal balance, respond to stimuli in its environment, exhibit stages of growth and development, and have the ability to reproduce. So I feel like that was a pretty easy question. Let me look at some of the samples that they gave us in this sampler here. This was the 2019 version of the exam, and I wrote down what slide it was on. Here we go. There's the question, and these are some of the possible scoring guidelines. You would get 3 out of 3 points if you explained how they supported the characteristic of life. They just took a really simple question and made it super complicated. These are all of the things that you could say. The rabbit is eating the grass to obtain energy. Living organisms are made of cells. The rabbit is eating grass to obtain the organic molecules needed to build cells. And I'm actually going to put this link into the Ed puzzle so you can check your work. All right, let's look at the next part of this question. There's usually, for the open-ended questions, there's usually a part A and a part B. Some scientists include the ability to adapt and evolve as a characteristic of life. Explain why the student would not make an observation at the park that would provide evidence to support this as a characteristic of life. So the adaptation or evolving or changing over time, one of those characteristics isn't really easy to observe in real time. And we know this because we know it takes many generations for that to occur. So the process of evolving generally takes a long time, carried out by a group of organisms over many generations. So you could not observe it in one park visit. Or you could also say the process of evolving and adapting is not carried out by an individual organism, but by a population over a long period of time. So it could not be observed during one park visit. So both of those would be fine. All right, so that ends session 1, sample questions. I hope this was helpful, and I hope you are starting to get the idea of what you're going to be seeing when you take the Keystone exam.